When Marco Gomes was 5 years old, his parents sent him to school in Brasilia, about 40 kilometers away from home. He'd ride the bus to town with his father, who had a job building sofas for the rich people who lived across the lake. Gomes' mother had already taught him to read, but she didn't know math, and she wanted him to learn it from the best public school she could send him to. That couldn't be found in his home village of Gama, and math would wind up being important for Gomes. School let out before his father would get done with work, so 5-year-old Gomes would walk a kilometer to the huge bus station in the middle of the 1960s modernist architecture of Brazil's capital city. Every day, his mother drilled his name and address into his head until he could recite it on command, but he could only do it if he recited the entire thing. Marco Gomes, Quadra 34, Numero 130, Setor Leste, Gama, DF, Brazil. He muttered it over and over to himself so he wouldn't forget. Remembering that address was his only thread home. I was like a robot, he says, driving around Brasilia today in his old Fiat, trained like a dog. One afternoon, Gomes fell asleep on the bus and missed his stop. He found a policeman, walked up to him, tugged on his sleeve, and demanded, "Take me to your general." The amused cop took the gangly 5-year-old to the station, where Gomes informed the captain he'd missed his stop and recited his address. The captain gave him a ride home in the front cabin of a paddy wagon, normally reserved for hardened drug runners and smugglers, the ones Gomes knew in his neighborhood and his extended family. The paddy wagon pulled into Gama, sirens blaring, and his frightened neighbors poured out of their homes to see what the trouble was. 5-year-old Gomes bounded out with his backpack, saying, "It's just me, everyone." Lesson 1. No matter what happens, I can make it on my own. Gomes stopped going to school in Brasilia at 6 years old. His family could no longer afford the cost of his taking the bus and buying lunch every day. He missed the teachers. In Gama, many kids couldn't read till their teens or later, and he was bored sitting in class with them. He missed chasing the pigeons in 3 Powers Square once class had ended, his arms and legs flailing. He even missed the bus. 6-year-old Gomes came home to his parents' wooden shack, one of many homes he shuttled between in his early life. His father was hunched over a plate in the middle of the room. "Marco, get in your room," his mother shouted at him. His eyes stung with tears. He didn't like being in trouble, and he didn't know what he'd done. He would later realize that plate was filled with cocaine, and his dad was an addict. That white powder his mother had always shielded him from was the biggest reason his parents didn't have money for him to take the bus anymore. It was the reason his parents fought. It was the reason his father lost a string of jobs. In years to come, the men who peddled that drug would gun down Gomes' cousin. The level of lethal violence in Brazil's slums, or favelas, is comparable to that of a modern civil war zone. In the worst areas, 1 in every 5 people has lost a loved one, many blaming the police for an inability or unwillingness to control the situation.